I've been spending my break looking through Studio Gilby, or whatever how you call it. But I've been fascinated by this specific nuance that you can feel underlying so many of the films, which is this feeling of a yearning between sorts of reality that we live in now and an alternate reality that can exist and is so close within reach, but yet so far. And I think this reality is exemplified through this use of children, this use of childhood, and where children represent this sort of undefiled, unrestricted, free-flowing, kind of desireless in some sense, egoless in some sense, where they're able to question things. They're able to be, humble and wrapped with awe at the world around them, to inquire curiously. And so many of the Ghibli films, all revolve around children. And the stories and the plights that they have. And, I find this fascinating because children is often used as a motif in trying to convey this notion of life's beauty. We look upon children as if they're this sort of, beaming representation of what we want in ourselves, something that we all yearn for deeply as humans. And this makes me question, right? What is it that children have? In my framework, the way I'm kind of building it up now, is that children have not yet conceived the notion of death. And while they may perceive essence in things, like the Buddhist Svabhava, or seeing that believing that things are permanent in some sense, they may not have yet conceived the notion of death. And so, without the notion of death, there's no such heroic acts as Ernest Becker may say in the Denial of Death, where he argues that because we are in denial of death, we actively try to cling to heroic methods where we try to make up something to convince ourselves that we're more of importance than we actually are. And adults, when they have conceived the notion of death, will constantly work to battle this notion of death. But when you're a child, that's inexistent. You don't question your own, life. You don't question death. And so you can be truly present in that moment, truly witnessing the miraculousness of everything around you. And that is why it's so precious. That's why the children will be curious and inquire things, because it is only in this state of wonderment, fascination, in which we can even begin to inquire about how is everything even possible. If we're too narrow-minded and tunnel-visioned in our own struggles of life, trying to cope with a reality that we're going to die someday, we're not going to be the children that are inside of us. And so children are in this, this motif that is just so powerful. They contain the same phenomenological perception that an adult may have, but they have just not yet conceived death, and so therefore they can be a lot more elated in the world. And the reason I say that they must see essence right? Because well, every human sees essence. Is because if they didn't see essence, then that means they would have to go through a very, big phenomenological shift sometime in their life, and I assume that would be a big commotion once that happened. It's rather easier to have in the beginning ages of your youth to question death than it is for an entire phenomenological shift where one begins to start seeing essence. Okay, that's kind of a trivial point, but anyways. So Studio Ghibli really utilizes this aspect of children. And these yearnings and these journeys that children will have. The importance of what it's like to harbor that fascination for the world. And if you look at films like My Neighbor Totoro or Spirited Away, if you were to put adults in that situation, they would be scared. They'd be timid of the world. They'd be questioning, why should I even explore? What's the point? Right? They're too narrow-minded in their focus. They're following the system and the society that's laid out for them because they're using it as a way to deny their own death. But children won't do that, and that's why it's so fascinating to see the children painted in Ghibli's way, where that's what we all yearn to be like in ourselves as the adults. We want to be these children with these childlike wishes to fulfill these things that we know we want to fulfill, but we can't because we're following a system that our bodies just have to follow. To deny our own denial of death is just to basically come face to face with death. And it's in some sense a sort of egotistical suicide. It's nearly impossible. And so we must coexist with this reality that we are denying death. And as adult, we are going through, a tunnel vision in this process. And so we can only sit back and look behind the window into what it will be like to live, a non-denial life. An embracing life where you can appreciate and be with everything and see everything in its tremendous beauties and qualities. But we miss that when we could become adults. And Studio Ghibli really works to bring that aspect back. As adults, we may spend our entire lives just sitting behind the window, not even realizing there's a window right there to look at or look out of. We just sit behind the window and look at it, and look at the work in front of us on our desk and just go away at it. Never to question, to look up, to see past that window and see what is out there. But Studio Ghibli provides this opportunity in giving us a peek into this world, which can make us feel in such ways, such powerful ways. This gets to my other, idea about what makes someone more disposed to see the window, to look past the window. Most adults will, never even notice the window and to look out of it or whatnot. But why do some people, are more inclined about it? Those who are not in the system as much, those who don't cling to this desire to deny their death as much, will question naturally, what more is there than the society that is present now? And in that search, they'll be looking for the window, although maybe not understanding exactly where it is and what it's looking out at. But these people have probably undergone some sort of radical shift in questioning to make them wonder even what they're doing in the first place. Whereas most other people who are already too integrated into the flow of society, who have never, took the moment or had a special moment in their life which beckoned them to question what is all this that's happening, will not be as inclined search for the window, to look out the window. And so films like Studio Ghibli may not strike a chord with them as much. Or certain other films, that provoke this sort of deeper meaning may be lost upon these people. But it's not like those people are not yearning for this childlike desire either. It's more like they are so engrossed in the reality that is now, and what they're doing now, and this denial of death, that they're not even fathoming the idea of there being something else. And so it doesn't strike them, and it won't make an impact on them. It's an interesting idea. But Studio Ghibli works with some very deep, profound ideas, and I think, films like Spirited Away or the Tale of Princess Kaguya are really thought-provoking, if you're in that correct state of mind. And if you're not, then it might just be an aesthetically pleasing film and a nice storyline. But it's something to think about.